Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Botts-Dever Institute for Wildlife Fertility Control 2021 Grant Cycle Pre-Applicant Informational Webinar. So welcome to everyone who's joined us today. My name is Monique Principi, and I am the Managing Director of the Botts-Dever Institute. Co-presenting with me today will be Stephanie Boyles Griffin, and she is the Botts-Dever Institute Science and Policy Director. So we'll go through the presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the conclusion. So with that, I will begin. Just to provide a little background for all of you, if you're not familiar with who we are and what we do, the Botts-Dever Institute for Wildlife Fertility Control was established in August 2016, and it is established through a partnership between the Dietrich W. Botts-Dever Foundation and the Humane Society of the United States. A little about our mission. The Botts-Dever Institute for Wildlife Fertility Control aims to advance the use of effective, sustainable fertility control methods to mitigate human-wildlife conflicts and promote coexistence worldwide. The kinds of things we do. The Botts-Dever Institute serves as a resource center for the burgeoning field of wildlife fertility control by stimulating vital discussion, collaboration, and networking through events supporting wildlife fertility control projects and educating wildlife managers, policymakers, and the public. It happens to be this year, 2021, our 5th anniversary year. So I'd like to just note that, and that there are new pages on our website that you might be interested in checking out that describe all of our activities over the last 5 years and new activities that we plan this year to commemorate our anniversary. Our grant-making philosophy. Well, the BIWFC serves as a leader in advancing the field of wildlife fertility control, understanding that broad-based collaboration is critical to any success. Likewise, we seek to be a catalyst in supporting a project that validates its worthiness by securing funding from several sources, and cost sharing for our grant program is encouraged. And this is a list of previous grants that the Botts-Dever Institute has awarded, if you'd like to peruse that quickly. And with that, we will begin to describe the grant cycle, and I will hand the mic over to Stephanie.
So good morning, everyone. Again, as Monique said, my name is Stephanie Boyles Griffin, and I'm the Science and Policy Director for the Botts-Dever Institute for Wildlife Fertility Control. And I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about our new grant cycle this morning, starting winter 2021. So the new and expanded grant making categories. So there are 6: public policy, education and stakeholder analysis, which includes community outreach and engagement. So these are projects that are typically done on the front end of wildlife fertility control projects to gauge the stakeholder groups, to get a better understanding of the people in the communities that would be served by any sort of wildlife fertility control project, and have a better understanding of those stakeholders and what their goals and objectives are, and to find out whether wildlife fertility control, for example, would be a good, what role it would play in whatever project it's intended for. So feasibility and cost studies, that's pretty straightforward. It's to determine if you're going to use a wildlife fertility control method to mitigate human-wildlife conflicts and promote coexistence, what the associated costs compared to other methods of wildlife conflict mitigation might be, and then the overall feasibility of conducting the study in a particular context. Proof of concept, these studies could include, but are not limited to, the development, so R&D for new agents. Those can include recombinant agents, controlled release technology, so methods to help an agent last longer in whatever animal you may be working with. Quality controls to make sure that whatever agent is used is produced in a consistent way so that animals treated respond in a consistent manner to the agent. Identification and delivery systems, those are examples of where we need to know which animals in a population have actually been treated with a particular fertility control method, and then ways to deliver the agents to those animals, to those targeted populations. And then environmental mitigation would mean ways to perhaps avoid having non-target animals be treated with a specific fertility control agent. That's just an example. And then modeling systems, how these agents can be used in combination with perhaps other management methods to manage populations over time in a humane, effective, and sustainable way. How much funding may I request? So we are giving grants up to $25,000 United States currency. And what we fund, so examples of items that can be included in a proposed budget would be direct costs, which exclude salary and benefits, travel, consumable supplies such as printing, related seminars and workshops, surveys, publications, documentaries, and other necessary expenses. So what we don't fund, so items that could be included in your overall budget, but would be excluded from being funded by funds that would be awarded by the Botsteber Institute. So those would include salaries and benefits, indirect costs, tuition, office equipment such as a computer, printer, office furniture, and recording equipment. Grant cycle timeline. So you can access this information also on our website at www.wildlifefertilitycontrol.org. But just to note that the deadline for the initial letter of intent submission is March 8th, 2021. And then, the notice of acceptance or the declination of the letter of intent will be delivered on April 12th. For those that have received a notice of acceptance for your letter of intent, the deadline for your full grant application proposal would be May 31st, 2021. And then the notice of the grant award or declination would be July 12th. And then the grants funded for this grant cycle would begin on September 7th, 2021. The final report for any grants that are awarded are 90 days after the agreed upon end date and grant funded activities. And with that, I will hand it back over to my Monique.
So there's really two major parts to an application, and Stephanie touched on this. The first step would be your letter of intent. So the format, generally, it should be written in English. It shouldn't exceed 2 single-spaced pages, and the margin should be set appropriately, 1 inch, etc. The requirements for the letter of intent, you would need to include the title of the project and the grant category you will address, your name as the principal investigators or the group of principal investigators, country of citizenship, applicant's position and institution, current and permanent mailing address, and current and permanent email address. And the idea for the letter of intent is that it meets the following requirements. It contains a project synopsis, not to exceed about 100 words. And it has to describe what the key outcome or product will be, the amount of money requested, and a budget in US dollars. And please also at that point indicate any other external funding secured or committed at that point. Your proposed start and end date of the project, and we're always interested to know where and how you heard about the BIWFC grant program. So submitting your letter of intent, once you have all of that, you should email it to biwfc@botsteber.org. And again, the deadline is March 8th, 2021 by midnight. And when you will find out the status of that letter of intent, you will receive an email notification Monday, April 12th. And always check your spam filters because it would be too bad for it to be sitting there unread. So just a reminder to do that. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie to describe step 2, which is the full proposal.
Okay, so the second step of the grant submission process is the full proposal. So written in English, the entire proposal package must not exceed 15 single-space pages, exclusive of audited financial statement or a 990 return, the margins being at least 1 inch, and the font size being no smaller than 11.
Step 2 of the full proposal is the grant proposal should include a proposal summary, a proposal narrative, and all required supporting documents.
Okay, so the next step, the proposal summary is not to exceed 2 single-space pages. Your submitted and approved letter of intent will serve as your proposal summary. If any information in your LOI has changed, however, you must submit a revised letter of intent which clearly indicates each change made. And please note, any substantive change made to your proposed scope of work after the BIWFC has approved your submitted LOI may require further review and discussion in order to determine continued eligibility for this RFP, so the winter 2021 grant cycle. The proposal narrative, so a description and justification. This should not, by the way, this should not exceed 6 single-space pages. A description and justification, goals and outcomes, design and methods, analysis, activities, the proposed project team, any animal welfare concerns that you want to disclose, and any other information that you think is important for us to know when considering your proposal. And then supporting documents. So those would include a budget and budget narrative, line by line, identifying which cost will be covered by this grant, any permits and approvals that are required, an IRS 501c3 determination letter, and CVs of individuals and principal investigators. And in supporting documents, if you are a nonprofit and have an advisory board or a board of directors, a list of the board members if that's available, audited financial statement or 990 return, any letters of support that you wish to submit along with your proposal, and the Botsteber Institute may request at least 2 letters of reference. And to submit your full proposal, you must email your full proposal to the email address listed here, biwfc@botsteber.org, no later than May 31st, 2021 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I believe with that, I'm going to hand it back over to my colleague, Monique.
So the next slide, I hope you're seeing, is the evaluation of your proposal. So some of the things that will be looked at in evaluation are the completeness and appropriateness of your responses to each of the elements of the proposal narrative, the completeness and appropriateness of your budget and budget narrative, the completeness of the entire application as a package, adherence to all the requirements, and the potential impact that your proposed project will have to advance the field of wildlife fertility control. And when we find out the status of the full proposal, that you will receive an email notification on Monday, July 12th. And again, the email will come from the Botsteber Institute, and a reminder about that, check your spam. If you are funded, this is sort of what will happen. A grant award agreement will be signed and executed. A Zoom meeting will be scheduled to get to know each other, for us to get to know you and you to get to know us, and to answer any remaining questions at that point. All grant funds will be distributed by August 31st, 2021. Grant funded activities may begin on or after September 7th, 2021, according to the time frame you set up in your proposal. You will have regularly scheduled check-in calls with BIWFC staff to review progress and to discuss any issues that may arise. And the grant report will be due to BIWFC, the Botsteber Institute, 90 days after the agreed upon end date of your grant funded activities. That really covers the main presentation. We just want to offer our thanks to the partnership between the Humane Society and the Dietrich W. Botsteber Foundation. You can check out our website to learn much more about what we do, and some of the things you might check out are our quarterly newsletters, which are all posted there. News about wildlife fertility control in general. We have a growing repository of all published materials having to do with wildlife fertility control. And all of our archived webinars, podcasts, videos, and presentations are there available to you. These are some of the ways to reach out to us, social media and otherwise. And with that, we will try to answer as many questions as you may have for us. So any other questions that may come up beyond this webinar, always reach out to us, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may think of after the completion of the webinar. So with that,
so I'll start with, can the award only be granted to US-based organizations? And I believe the answer to that question is no.
The answer to that is no. No.
Yes.
We can provide grants to non-US organizations.
That's correct. If one applies for the full amount of the grant, is it possible that only a part of the grant will be awarded? Monique, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can, yes, judging from the budget materials that you provide, we can decide to fund elements of the budget, and we would discuss that with you prior to awarding anything.
How many grants do you envision funding this cycle and total cycle budget?
Yeah, it is hard to say at this point how many grants, just because it really depends on the application requests. People can request up to $25,000. So it's really hard for us to envision at this point what our applicant pool is and what those requests might be. So it's difficult for me to give you a definite number.
Does the salary funding exclusion apply to wages for field assistants or technicians? That's a good question.
We have in the past reviewed budgets that had more so contracted costs for assistance and technical assistance,
right.
Not sort of existing salaries and benefits that are already, being offered via institutions, like salary support for current researchers or current professors. But this would be specifically if your project requires technical assistance, and it can be paid sort of as in a contracted amount, then we would definitely consider that.
Okay. Can a grant use 2 categories? I don't think that's a problem at all. So I think that what they're asking is, do you have to submit a grant that only would fund a project involved in one category of and I would say no. If the grant would support multiple categories, then I don't think we would have a problem with that. But again, if we did, I think it was a worthy proposal. I think we could discuss that, but I don't see that being a hindrance. Do you, Monique?
No, I think some projects may actually span a couple of those areas, and that would be reasonable to consider that. Yeah.
And then are IACUCs required? And I think that would depend on the nature of the project. And if people have specific questions about IACUC requirements, probably best to talk to us about your project prior to submitting your LOI, so we can let you know that ahead of time. I don't think you would need to disclose that at the time of the LOI, but you probably would if your LOI got through the LOI process and it went to full proposal. What about metrics of impact? That's a good question. It's not clear from the question if that is a comment on how the proposals will be judged, so to speak. So I'm assuming that that's what that is in reference to. And I think that's what the point that we're trying to make in that last point is, what is the potential impact that the proposed project would have on promoting and advancing the field of wildlife fertility control. One person had a question about, is this targeting adult animals? And again, that's really up to the applicant. Generally, wildlife fertility control projects do tend to target adult animals, but that may not necessarily be the case or the approach that a particular applicant is attempting to address. So it would really just depend.
Are projects outside of the U.S. considered, again, I think that was asked before, but maybe it isn't quite clear, because it says, are grants only awarded to U.S. organizations? And no, they are not awarded only to U.S. organizations. So we do accept applications from non-U.S. organizations.
And I think you already answered the next question, but you can reiterate it in case they missed it.
Yeah, sure. How many grants do you plan to award this year? And it's just, I really don't want to put a number on it. It's just too difficult to know. We're going to see what our applicant pool is and the requests for actual money amounts as they come in.
Okay.
Stephanie,
Take that one.
we are
Yes.
seeking to conduct a project investigating in more depth the effects of particular fertility
Control.
Sorry.
On target animals.
Control project on target animals. What project category would this fall under? Or would it be suitable for the BIWFC program?
I mean, I don't see a reason why that would not be a project that we would consider. There's, given the description, but again, please feel free to reach out to us before the LOI deadline to tell us a little bit more about your idea so that we can be helpful in letting you know if it does fall into a category, and if so, which one, so you can identify that one in your LOI. So the next question, are you only interested in chemical or IUD methods, or would you consider projects that include surgical sterilization? The project in mind may include both chemical and surgical, but partners are interested in surgical sterilization of mares or of male horses. So there's no reason why you could not submit a project about surgical sterilization. So that, no, this is not for only chemical or chemical agents necessarily. It would just really depend on the context. But yes, I mean, that subject would fall under one of the categories that we discussed earlier, yes.
Another question coming in, do we need a full 990 return or can we use easy postcard file? Well, you've got me on that one. But it's something I can check with our administrator at the foundation and follow up with you on that. Or if you want to, after this, just send me a quick email to make sure that I remember to get that answer to you.
And we have another question about IACUC. What are your expectations for animal welfare oversight? I'm at a university working with a nonprofit that owns horses on a large and extensive property, approximately over 10,000 acres. Would you expect us to run this project through a university IACUC? Possibly. And again, that's something that we can discuss offline if you want to shoot us an email. And the reason being is, you know, any information that's garnered from a project, you know, the hopes that is that the project data would be published. And so if there's any chance that the project, you know, investigator would have a hard time publishing that data without an IACUC involved, that may be a reason in addition to animal welfare concerns. So again, it just really depends. And so the more information you can provide us with so that we can make the best determination possible, the better. You fund outside consultants. I think again, it depends. We have in the past, as Monique said. So again, highly recommend people that are interested in submitting an LOI. If you have these outstanding questions while you're in the process of thinking this through, please reach out to us. You want to take the next one, Monique?
Yeah, and I would just add to that, that if that's the case, then just the more detail you provide about exactly what that is, the better.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you fund projects that are already up and running, but need funding to continue for another year? Yes, I would say yes, we do.
Absolutely. And again, as Monique mentioned, we're interested in collaboration. So if it's an existing project and you have some funding from other sources and are looking for supplementary funding in order to fund the project, we welcome that as well. You just have to disclose those additional funding sources, and we highly encourage that during the application process.
Hi, this is Andrea from working on animals. My questions are, is appreciated the funding from the applicant in cash and in kind in the eligible costs is possible to cover the salary
Or per diem?
per diem uh, of public veterinarians?
I think
I don't really, Stephanie, do you understand
yeah,
the first part of that
do.
question?
I do. So I think we just addressed this. So she is asking if co-funding matching funds are appreciated, and that would be absolutely.
Oh, yes.
That. And in eligible costs is the cost to cover the salary or per diem for public veterinarians. So per diem would be, food and per day. And I would say yes, because that in that, depending on the context, that would be a consultant. That would not be somebody that is part of your group that is already on salary. This would be somebody you would be hiring to do a specific project.
Yeah, yeah. And if you can show the necessity for that person or persons, and I would say per diem would definitely be
Yes.
Something we could cover.
And then, is Geese management acceptable for a grant? I'm going to say yes, but again, it needs to be a wildlife fertility control project. So there would have to be some role, some wildlife fertility control role in your overall integrated geese management program, but I don't see a reason why we wouldn't. And then a reminder, there may have been a slight error on the exact time when the deadline proposal is. This would be step 2. And it is, we said May 31st EST, but it would be EDT by that time, so Eastern Daylight Time. We'll put that on the website, but one of our staff just caught that. Thank you, Larry. And we will change that, but it's an hour difference, so just make a note of that. Is there a timeline limit for the project? I think I will answer this no, because as we just answered another question, we realize that people may request funding for either ongoing projects or projects that are longer than 1 year. The important thing to note is the grant is only for 1 year. And so if you wanted to request funding for an additional year for an ongoing multi-year project, you would have to apply again, and you would be competing with everybody else that applies that year for the the capacity that we have that given year to award grants. But yes, so the answer to that question is absolutely. So those of you that do have some questions that require a little bit more context in order for us to answer them as best we can, please do not hesitate to go ahead and shoot us an email as soon as you can, so that we can work with you through this, so that if you are interested in submitting an LOI, you're able to do so by the deadline. Is the right email to use for inquiries and further questions the same one presented in the slideshow? Absolutely. You can submit your questions to BIWFC@botsdeber.org. And then we just had another one come in, a couple actually. Well, yeah, one, I think that was duplicated. Beyond funding, do you provide any expertise? Adding to that, for example, someone to help us through the plan and how it would roll out.
A plan for a project? I'm not quite sure.
So I think I can answer this one. So
Okay.
Because we our goal is to be the clearinghouse resource for those interested in the field of wildlife fertility control. We have a lot of contacts with folks that are actually working in the field, some of which actually serve on our advisory board, and others we simply know because we're familiar with their work. So if you have a specific question in context always feel free to contact us, and we will try our best to hook you up with somebody that may be working in that context with that species that may be able to help you out. We can't make any promises, obviously, but if we know somebody that we think would be a good fit for you, that's one of our jobs. So please do.
I'd just like to thank everyone who attended. We're happy to see you here. And we look forward to hearing from you with questions or receiving your letter of intent. So I guess with that, we will end the webinar. Okay?
Take care, everybody.
All right. Thanks.